There are moments in life when the clouds roll in so heavy, you can't tell if it's day or night. Moments when the wind screams louder than your prayers, when the thunder outside feels quieter than the storm inside. You've been there, heart racing, faith trembling, wondering how something invisible can hurt so much. It doesn't always arrive with warning. It doesn't always knock before it enters. Sometimes life just shifts and suddenly you're in it, the storm. Not a drizzle, not a passing cloud, but a full, roaring, soul-rattling storm. And in the middle of it, you start to ask the ancient questions. Why me? Where is God? How do I hold on when everything around me is letting go? But let me whisper something your storm doesn't want you to remember. This is not the end. This is a page, not the whole story. This is a chapter, not the conclusion. Because storms don't write your identity, God does. The storm may have come to shake you, but it will not shape you unless you let it. It may howl, it may bend your spirit, it may cause you to question your strength, your direction, even your worth. But hear this. You are not what you're going through. You are not your fear. You are not your failure. You are not your fatigue. You are who God called you before the wind ever started blowing. And storms don't erase God's call. They reveal it. They don't destroy what's eternal. They awaken it. See, storms have a way of stripping you down until all that's left is the truth. And the truth is, you're stronger than you think. Because the one who made you doesn't build soft-spoken souls for easy roads. He builds storm walkers, wave riders, faith holders. He builds you. So don't judge your journey by the weather, and don't mistake the storm for the destination. Because storms pass. They always do. Clouds move, seas settle, wounds heal, and souls rise again. Especially those that remember who they belong to. And you belong to a God who never panics, who isn't surprised by your struggle, who isn't intimidated by your storm. He saw it before you felt it, and He's already in your tomorrow, making a way through what feels impossible today. So take heart, even if it's just a whisper of hope, even if your hands are still shaking and your voice is still unsure. Take heart. This storm will not be your ending. It will be the evidence that you were built to rise. God saw the storm before you did. Before the winds ever started to howl, before the sky cracked open with thunder, before you even knew a storm was forming, God already saw it coming. And not only did He see it, He factored it into your becoming. You see, we often panic at what heaven already planned for. We tremble when the sky darkens. But God is never surprised by clouds. He doesn't flinch when the waves rise. He doesn't check the forecast. He is the forecast. And what looks like chaos to you is often choreography to Him. You thought this storm caught you off guard, but child, it never caught God. He saw every drop before it fell. He heard the wind before it whispered. He knew the pressure that would come, and He still said, "You are ready." Not ready because you feel strong, not ready because you've got all the answers, but ready because He's with you. God doesn't need perfect conditions to move. He moves in storms. He speaks through wind. He walks on water. He whispers from whirlwinds. And most of all, He builds His people in wild, uncharted weather because storms reveal things sunshine never could. They show us who we are and, more importantly, who God is. We pray for calm, but He prepares us for conflict, not because He enjoys your struggle, but because He knows the glory He's placed inside you can only rise when the ground is shaking. The storm is not proof that God left. It's proof that He trusts what He put in you. He saw this moment long before you ever cried through it, and He still chose you, still anointed you, still believed you could carry this part of the journey. You think the wind is here to break you, but what if it's here to push you forward? What if it's here to teach you how to fly? God doesn't waste a single storm, not one, not the one that broke your heart, not the one that shattered your plans, not the one that made you question your faith. Even that storm, the one you prayed would pass, even that has purpose. And maybe, just maybe, this storm isn't the enemy. Maybe it's the tool, the fire, the furnace, the proving ground. Because if God saw it and still allowed it, that means something divine is being written in the rain. So no, the storm didn't surprise Him, and it won't stop Him either. He's the same God in the thunder as He is in the still, small voice. The same God who parted the sea still makes a path for you through every wave. Don't be afraid. Be still. Be watchful. And remember, before the storm, there's something sacred about survival, about the quiet kind of strength that doesn't need to shout to be heard. You carry that strength. Yes, you, the one who's standing in the middle of the storm right now. But before you forget who you are, let me remind you of what you've already come through. This is not your first night crying, not your first time praying with no answer in sight, not your first storm, even if it feels like the fiercest one yet. You've survived worse. You've walked through pain that no one clapped for. You've buried dreams without a funeral. You've held your breath in broken rooms and smiled in places your heart wanted to run from. You've stood in silence while your soul was screaming, and still you woke up again. You kept going when it would have been easier to quit. You laughed while holding your own heartbreak. You encouraged others with words you needed for yourself. That's no small thing. That is faith. That is resilience. That is the mark of someone who's been kept by grace. The storm you're in right now isn't the first time you've been shaken, and it won't be the first time you rise, because you have a memory with God, a track record, evidence of survival etched into your bones, proof that you've already seen nights darker than this, and somehow, you're still here. Don't let the present pain make you forget your past power. You've walked through fire before and didn't come out smelling like smoke. You've danced in deserts, sung through sorrow. You've carried your cross and still spoke with kindness. And if you made it through that, then you can make it through this. You're not starting from scratch. You're starting from strength. So no matter how loud the thunder feels or how high the waves rise, let your past remind your present. You were born for survival. You didn't just inherit a name, you inherited a legacy of those who kept walking, of those who heard no 1,000 times and still believed in yes. You're made of more than emotion. You're made of eternity. Your breath is borrowed from heaven. Your feet walk on promises. Your tears are seen by God Himself. And while others may see the storm, heaven sees the seed of greatness, of glory, of endurance. So don't give in and don't bow down to fear. You've survived worse. And this is just another chapter in the story of your strength. This storm isn't here to end you. It's here to prove you were built for more. So breathe, stand, even if you have to do it trembling. You don't have to know the way forward. You just have to remember who brought you this far. And that same God who never left you in the last storm is walking with you now. You're not going under, you're going through. Because, child of God, you've survived worse. This storm is a classroom. Storms don't just shake you, they teach you. You may think you're simply trying to survive it, but God may be using it to school you, to train you, to stretch you, to prepare you for rooms you haven't even entered yet. Because every storm is a classroom, and every tear is a lesson. Heaven never wastes the pain. It uses it to refine the soul. You see, comfort doesn't teach like conflict does. The calm won't challenge you. But a storm will make you listen. It will strip away the noise and leave you face to face with truth. And maybe, just maybe, that's what this is all about. Not punishment, not abandonment, but preparation. God's greatest revelations don't always come on mountaintops. Sometimes they come in midnight rain, in the wind that howls against your hope, in the thunder that drowns out your pride. Because storms humble us. They remind us how small we are and how mighty God is. They expose what's shaky and anchor what's real. They force us to ask the hard questions. Who am I when things don't go my way? What do I really believe? What's my faith made of when the blessings stop flowing and all I have is a promise? That's why this isn't just a trial. It's a training ground for patience, for character, for depth, for destiny. You don't grow muscle in rest. You grow it under resistance. And your soul is doing just that, lifting weight in the spirit, learning how to endure when it's not easy, learning how to trust when the answer is not yet. And sometimes the test is silence. Sometimes the curriculum is delay. Sometimes the breakthrough doesn't come until you've learned what the breakdown came to show you. Because God doesn't just want you strong. He wants you wise. He wants you grounded. He wants you equipped to carry the blessing without it crushing you. So this classroom, with its cold wind and closed doors, with its late nights and lonely mornings, is producing something eternal in you. You are not being punished. You are being processed. He is refining your hearing, so when the next season calls, you don't miss the voice of God. He is deepening your discernment, so you don't settle for shallow waters when deep calls unto deep. He is showing you what matters, what lasts, what truly holds when everything else is stripped away. And when you leave this classroom, because yes, there is a graduation, you'll come out with more than just survival. You'll come out with wisdom, with weight, with worship, the breaking that builds you. Sometimes God doesn't rescue you from the breaking. He walks you through it. Because not all breaking is punishment. Some breaking is birth. Some shattering is sacred. We don't like the breaking. We pray against it. We ask God to take it away, to end the discomfort, to smooth the sharp edges. But what if the breaking is the very place where the blessing begins? What if the cracks in your life are how His light finally gets in? You see, we think strength looks like holding it all together, but sometimes strength is in the letting go, in the release, in the surrender that says, God, I can't carry this alone. And God meets you there, in the fragments, in the pieces, in the mess that no one else sees. Because He is not afraid of your breaking. He is not ashamed of your unraveling. He is the God who formed you from dust, and He knows how to breathe life even into what feels like ruin. You thought you were falling apart, but He was rearranging you. You thought you lost everything, but He was making room for something greater. Yes, it hurts. Yes, it feels like too much. But beloved, This is not the kind of breaking that leaves you destroyed. This is the kind that builds you again, stronger, deeper, and more real. Think of the seed. It must break before it can grow. Think of the alabaster jar. It had to be crushed for the fragrance to be released. You too are carrying oil, and sometimes the only way it pours is through the pressure. So stop seeing your breaking as your ending. Start seeing it as your becoming, because the most beautiful things in life aren't always birthed in victory. They are birthed in vulnerability. On the other side of this pain is a version of you that you've never met. One who prays deeper, loves harder, trusts more freely, and walks lighter, because the weight that once defined you has been lifted. God is doing something in this breaking that comfort could never accomplish. He's removing what you no longer need, old fears, false identities, weights you were never meant to carry. He's breaking off the lies, the limits, the need to pretend you're always okay. Because you don't have to be perfect to be powerful. You don't have to be whole to be holy. You just have to be willing. Willing to let Him work in the broken places. So if you're in pieces right now, if your heart is heavy and your spirit is tired, know this: you are not falling apart. You are falling into purpose. Let the breaking happen. Let the layers fall away. Let grace rebuild you, not as you were, but as you were always meant to be. This is not a breakdown. This is a breakthrough in disguise. Because sometimes the breaking is the blessing. When the wind is a whisper, we expect God to roar, to split the sky, to shake the earth, to speak in lightning bolts and thunderclaps. But more often than not, He whispers. And if you're not still, if you're not quiet, if you're not willing to lean in past the chaos, you'll miss Him. Because His voice doesn't compete. It doesn't shout above the storm. It waits in the hush between the waves, in the silence between your sobs, in the quiet that feels like emptiness, but is actually the space where heaven leans closest. The wind may be howling, but inside it is a whisper, and the whisper is holy. When Elijah stood on the mountain, the wind tore through the cliffs. The earthquake shook the ground. The fire blazed and dazzled the eyes. But God was not in any of those. He came in a still, small voice. And if Elijah hadn't waited, if he had assumed God's voice had to sound grand, he might have missed the moment that changed everything. So if the storm has gone quiet around you, and you feel like heaven has too, don't assume you've been abandoned. Sometimes silence isn't God leaving. It's God speaking in a language that only stillness understands. Maybe He's quiet because He wants you to listen deeper. Maybe He's not absent, He's intimate, leaning in, close enough to whisper so you'll draw near to hear Him. Because in the chaos of the world, we start believing that louder means stronger, that noise equals presence. But God doesn't follow our volume. He follows our hunger. And hunger learns how to listen for the whisper. The whisper that says, "You're not alone." The whisper that says, "I'm still working." The whisper that says, "Peace, be still." Even when everything around you is anything but still, the whisper is where God tucks His treasures, not in the spotlight, not in the noise, but in the intimate corners of your soul where only you and He meet. You don't need fireworks to know He's near. You need quiet courage. You need sacred patience. You need ears tuned to frequency, not volume. Because the whisper will never force itself, but it will fill you if you make space for it. So slow your steps, quiet your heart, turn down the noise of your fears, the hum of your doubts, the echo of what the world keeps saying, and listen for the whisper that reminds you who you are, whose you are, and where He's taking you. Because sometimes the storm isn't meant to drown you. It's meant to drown out everything. You are still here. You've been through storms that tried to silence you. Through nights so long you forgot what morning felt like. Through deserts so dry you forgot what it meant to breathe freely. And yet, you are still here. Maybe not untouched, maybe not unscarred, but undefeated, because survival is its own kind of miracle, and sometimes the loudest praise is simply your presence. Still standing, still breathing, still believing, if only by a thread. You didn't crumble when they left. You didn't fold when it all fell apart. You didn't quit when quitting was easier, and that alone is holy. See, we wait for the big miracle, the parting sea, the raised dead, the blinding light from heaven. But what if the miracle is you? You waking up anyway. You lifting your head again. You choosing love when you had every reason to be bitter. You whispering prayers when the last one felt unanswered. You trusting God while walking through shadows. Don't minimize that. Don't overlook the sacred in the steady. You are the testimony. You are the evidence that grace still holds, that mercy still finds, that God still keeps His word, because if the enemy had his way, you'd be gone by now. But you're not. You're still here, and that changes everything. You've grown in the dark. Roots going deep beneath the surface, character forged in the furnace, faith built not by comfort, but by confrontation with everything you thought would take you out. And yes, you've wept, you've doubted, you've screamed at the ceiling and sat in silence waiting for God to show up. But every second you stayed, every breath you chose, every step you took when nothing made sense, heaven noticed. You may not feel strong, but strength is not the absence of struggle. It's showing up inside of it. It's holding on when your fingers slip. It's choosing hope when the news is bad. It's refusing to curse the storm, even while standing in the middle of it. You are not here by accident. You are here by assignment, preserved, protected, prepared. You are a survivor, not by luck, but by divine design, and you need to stop apologizing for still being in the race. Stop hiding the battle scars. They are proof of your endurance, proof of your process, proof that even in rise in the rain. Anyone can walk when the sun is shining, but rising when it's still raining? That's where faith lives. That's where courage is born, because waiting for the storm to pass before you believe again is not faith. Faith says, even if it's still raining, I'll stand. Even if I'm still aching, I'll move. Even if I can't see the finish line, I'll keep walking. Rain doesn't mean you're not called. Rain doesn't mean God changed His mind. Rain is just the setting, not the sentence. And sometimes your greatest breakthrough will come while it's still pouring. You want to wait for things to be perfect, for peace to settle, for answers to arrive, for the fear to disappear. But child of heaven, if you wait for the sky to clear, you may never rise. Because storms don't stop purpose, they push it. And faith doesn't bloom in control. It grows wild in chaos. Ask Noah, ask Ruth, ask David, ask Jesus. The anointing didn't fall in calm. It showed up in crisis. God doesn't wait for dry ground to call you forward. Sometimes He tells you to step out while the clouds are still crying. So what are you waiting for? Are you waiting for the pain to end before you praise? Are you waiting for the fear to leave before you speak with fire? Or will you rise right in the rain? Will you lift your head with drops still falling on your face? Will you say, I don't know how this ends, but I know who holds the ending? Because there is something sacred about people who rise in the middle, not after the healing, not after the resolution, not after the blessing comes in a box with a bow, but right there, in the tension, in the unknown, in the messy, unanswered place of in-between. They rise, and that rising shakes the heavens. It says to every dark thing, I still believe. It says to fear, you do not own me. It says to God, I trust you, even now. So don't wait for dry ground. Stand on wet faith. Praise with soaked shoes. Worship with a damp heart. Pray with thunder all around you, because rain is not your enemy. It's just the background music to your comeback. You're not fragile, you're favored, and the rain isn't a sign that you're forgotten. It's the sound of something growing, even now, even here, even in this. So rise, and keep rising. Rise with a limp, rise with questions, rise with wounds still healing, rise with a voice that's finding its strength again. Because you don't need dry skies to walk in destiny. You just need to remember who called you. And beloved, He called you to rise. You were built for this. Let me tell you something that your fear keeps trying to silence. You were built for this. Not built in ease, not built in applause, not built in perfection, but built in fire, built in quiet, built in the deep places where only God's hands could reach. You are not a mistake wrapped in skin. You are a masterpiece wrapped in mystery. And this storm? It did not come to destroy you. It came to reveal you. Because everything that tries to break you only confirms that you carry something powerful. Heaven doesn't invest in what won't be used. And if you're being pressed, it's because you were designed to pour. You think it's about the storm, but it's really about the strength inside you that the storm is trying to awaken. You were built for winds like this. Your roots are deeper than you know. Your foundation was carved by divine blueprints. God made you with the kind of courage that doesn't melt in heat, it multiplies. You've been through too much to doubt it now. You didn't come this far just to crumble. There's a warrior in your chest, and that heartbeat, it's a battle drum. Every no that tried to stop you, you outlived it. Every door that closed, you built something better with the wood. Every voice that said you weren't enough, you proved that grace doesn't need permission to be powerful. You've got scars, yes, but don't you know, scars are not signs of defeat. They are sacred tattoos of survival, and yours speak louder than fear ever could. You are made of rivers that didn't drown you. You are made of fire that didn't consume you. You are made of prayers that rose from broken places and still reached heaven. You were built for disappointment and came out with discernment. You were built for silence and still heard God speak. You were built for abandonment and found belonging in His arms. This is more than survival. This is sanctified strength, because God didn't just keep you, He kept you for something. So straighten your spine. Lift your chin. Let your tears fall if they must, but never mistake them for weakness. Tears are water to the soil of your next season. Don't hide anymore. Don't shrink. Don't apologize for what you carry. Walk like heaven wrote your name in fire. Speak like your voice breaks chains. Stand like you were created to disturb darkness with light, because you were built to endure. You were built to overcome. You were built to blaze trails where no one else had the faith to go. The storm only came because your purpose is that loud. And the enemy doesn't waste storms on souls without impact. You were never meant to fit in. You were meant to transform atmospheres, to shift generations, to become what the world tried to break. So let this be your reminder. Rise because you listened. There is a sacred strength that lives not in your fists, but in your ears. Not in how loud you shout, but in how deeply you listen. Because obedience, true, quiet, radical obedience, is one of the most dangerous weapons you'll ever carry. And beloved, you listened. When the noise of fear tried to drown out your peace, you listened for the whisper. When your own doubts screamed louder than your prayers, you bent your ear to heaven. You didn't run. You didn't collapse. You didn't curse the silence. You learned how to wait in it. And that waiting, that stillness, that listening in the dark, that was worship. You listened when nothing made sense. You stayed when the exit would have been easier. You trusted what you couldn't see. You obeyed a whisper when everything in your body was begging for proof. And now, heaven is saying, rise. Rise not because the rain has stopped, but because your roots are deeper now. Rise not because the fire is gone, but because it no longer controls you. Rise because you've been refined, because the quiet places have carved out a power in you the world wasn't ready for. You listened, and in listening, you were led, and in being led, you were lifted. You know now how to walk even when the ground beneath you trembles. You know how to hear God's heart even when His hand seems still. This is your moment, not just to survive the storm, but to rise from it. Rise with the wisdom that can only come from wilderness. Rise with the kind of joy that only follows sorrow, because nothing hits harder than a soul who suffered in silence and still chose God's voice over their own vengeance. You could have become bitter, but you chose to be better. You could have gone numb, but you chose to feel it, to sit in it, to ask the hard questions and wait for divine answers. And because of that, now you rise with clarity. Now you rise with authority. Not the loud kind, not the stage kind, but the kind that changes atmospheres just by entering the room. Because when you listen deeply, you move differently. You speak with weight. You walk with heaven's rhythm. You are not who you were when this storm began. You are wiser, softer, stronger, and most of all, you are in tune. So rise, not just from the pain, but into the purpose. Rise with your ears still tuned to the quiet. Rise with your soul still anchored in stillness. Rise not for applause, but for alignment. Rise because you know the sound of His voice now, and you'll never again let. Beloved, you made it through the rain. Not because it was easy, but because God is faithful. You didn't break. You bent. You didn't quit. You leaned in. And in the silence, you didn't go numb. You listened. Now, rise as the warrior you are. Walk like one who has been in the fire and came out glowing with grace. Let the world see what it looks like when someone holds on to heaven, even when hell tries to break them. You were built for this, and now someone else needs your light. If this message touched your spirit, share it with someone still in their storm. Let them know the silence is not the end. It's where God begins to speak. Subscribe for more soul-deep encouragement. Drop a comment. Just say, "I'm still here," so we can celebrate your rise. You listened. You endured. And now, it's your time to shine.